Project Lawful aka Plane Crash by Arwayne aka Eliezer Yudkowsky and Lintamande.
Riedel, aspiring lich, Arwayne, he strolls up to one of the entrances of the Black Dome, walking and at a normal walking speed, his acquired teleport destination having been a couple of miles away in Sothis. He does not particularly wish to make a production about traveling too quickly through the city, including by flying about invisibly, and he's not wasting multiple dimension doors on popping around that way. "Hello?" Riedel says to the fanciest-looking guard there. "I'm told you've acquired a certain Carissa Sevar. I am sent here by my employer, Keltham, to bring her to him. He looks unmagical and like he doesn't have an alignment aura. Unless somebody is looking very hard, in which case he has magic items filling practically every one of his slots, and is very lawful evil."
Osirian wants to be clear that if they were selling Sevar to a potentially adversarial government, at this point they would demand a price that's more than even Keltham can reasonably afford. And if they're handing her over without having even interrogated her for everything she knows about Chelish war preparations, they're going to need some substantial reassurances that this is reasonably in their interests.
Well then, he'll take out an absurdly expensive magic mirror, still without radiating any magic unless somebody is looking quite hard, and exchange a few words. My employer, Keltham, says that he does not mind if you question Carissa Seaver about Chelish war preparations for a short time, if she's amenable. He understands if you do not want to rely entirely on his own intentions to destroy Cheliax if they attempt that. If you are also checking Sevar for compulsions, truth-spelling her about Chelish plots and the like, he requests to be told any results so as to avoid duplicated inconvenience to her. As for the other part, Keltham does bid you be told this. He's not particularly offering to buy Carissa Sevar from you unless she's given herself to you as a slave, with intent to be sold on to him at some absurd price. Which, knowing her, he hasn't actually ruled out, he says. But otherwise, he's assuming that Carissa Sevar came to Osirian thinking that Keltham was there. If Carissa Sevar does not say otherwise, then Keltham considers her to be an important noble and official of his potentially adversarial government. That went to Osirian thinking to meet him. He is willing to pay tenfold a reasonable amount for any trouble you went to, or consider other favors.
Get everything you can out of her with Dominate Person then, and send her on, unless I guess we strongly expect that to go badly, in which case I'm inclined to just send Keltham. We strongly expect that to go badly. Look.
We strongly expect that she'll either seduce him back to Asmodeanism, seduce him to her own heretical Asmodean cult, which is even more dangerous than Asmodeanism because it makes people not fear hell and still go there and be just as badly off. She's defected, and will help him with his plans which are good for us. Or she's defected and will help him with his plans that are bad for us. One of those.
Tell her to take the headband off, dominate her, and then bring her in here. I want to meet her.
Carissa is pretty sure that her core realization in those mysterious 10 minutes was just that she couldn't get what she wanted by serving Asmodeus. But that's not actually sufficient for her to have decided to sell her soul. It's an extreme step, to put it mildly, and cuts off many possible paths of getting what she wanted. She might have done it just to bring rapprochement with Keltham, or just because she should go to hell if she did that to other people, just because it would have been inconvenient not to.
The door opens again, and one of the risen guards steps through again. Keltham has requested that you be sent on to him.
I request that also.
Keltham is not allied with Osirian at this time, and Osirian's own security interests don't encourage us to pass on to a potentially hostile foreign power a Chelish agent.
I work for Keltham, not for Cheliax.
Are you amenable to a brief interrogation about the state of Chelish preparations for war with Osirian as a condition of your swift release to Keltham?
If I say no, what happens?
We argue with Keltham at more length, presumably, about whether we are entitled to insist.
Doesn't seem very Abaddaren.
In a world that was full of Abaddaren agents, our country would not be under imminent threat of destruction, and our predictable policies towards Chelish defectors would be set with more consideration for encouraging defections, because Cheliax wouldn't just lie about our policies anyway.
You haven't even offered to pay me for everything I know about Chelish war preparations.
We'll pay you fairly for what we learn.
Oh. For some reason, that wasn't what she expected to hear. And if I know nothing of value to you?
It'll almost certainly still move the markets and we'll pay you off that. I can get you a fixed minimum payment if you want.
She doesn't actually, at this point, want anything money can buy. Are you also doing this to Olegario?
Yes.
Did you ask if he was amenable?
We told him you said to cooperate, which he's been doing.
That's obvious. She's juggling too many balls, trying to move forward too fast on too many fronts of possible inference. She doesn't know the answer to the question Osirian presumably desperately wants answered. Why hasn't Cheliax attacked yet? Will her defection change that? Fine.
Take the crown off.
No.
If you keep it on, we'll keep you cursed so you can barely think. If you take it off, we'll give you a 4/4 that we've vetted for not having extra abilities built in you could use to assassinate the pharaoh.
I'm worried you'll refuse to give it back.
I swear to you that I intend to personally follow you around holding it. It won't leave your line of sight, except when you prostrate yourself before the pharaoh. And I'll give it back to you unaltered when we send you on to Keltham. I expect the chances it'll be taken are very small. If we wanted to steal it, we'd have just killed you briefly.
You can't kill me briefly and be sure of holding on to me. Dispater might not send a Chelish defector back. I want a guarantee from the pharaoh that he'll do everything in his power to ensure I get it back.
I'll relay that.
Yes, of course. He does not commit this to writing until he's spent a solid minute reflecting carefully on what kinds of things this might call on him to do and deciding he's all right with them. Abadar's word is not given lightly.
Carissa takes a deep breath, closes her eyes, and takes the headband off. Then they dominate person her, and it's hard to be too terribly invested in the goings-on after that. Put the headband on, the thought comes to her, and she obediently puts the headband on, and her mind is sharper and clearer. Then they snap the dominate person, and it's like pitching forwards into an ice-cold river, everything suddenly pressing back in around her. The stakes, the fate of the world, Keltham. She can remember the last half hour, but like a dream where everything came with a conviction, it was justified and made perfect sense. That didn't bottom out in anything. She's in a lovely Osirian bathing room. It has mosaic tiles and pretty silk fabric hangings and a mirror and a pretty woman her own age who is watching her concernedly.
Water?
Sure?
Lemon slice? No lemon slice?
In the water? Why would I want it to have a lemon slice?
I'm gonna call that no lemon slice. She hands her the water. I think some people like it because it's fancier. No peasants drinking their water with lemon slices. And some like the taste. Do you want something to eat?
I have a ring of sustenance, and I want Keltham. I agreed to this nonsense so that you'd send me to him faster. Now we're done, right? So you'll send me to him?
Yes, definitely. You can make that happen faster by getting dressed. She holds up some clothes.
She looks down. She's no longer in just her nightgown. She's in her nightgown draped in some ornate Osirian ceremonial thing. Right. So she could meet the pharaoh. She remembers putting it on.
I'm to help you get dressed and reoriented, and in a little while, they'll let us know your ride is here to pick you up. I don't actually get to decide when your ride is here, because it'd be harder for me to help you get reoriented if I were in the way of something you need. But I am reporting, yes, she drank some water, and yes, she seems to understand what's going on. If you think it'd help you get reoriented if I stopped reporting anything, I'll do that.
She can get dressed her own self, and is doing that. We're in a palace. Obviously, you're reporting to someone. If you told me you weren't, I wouldn't believe you. Is your job cheering people up after your government interrogates them?
No, we're not good. My job is helping girls who've gotten hurt, or had sex they didn't want, or who just arrived here as a gift, or who needed to be personally interrogated by the pharaoh while under a dominate person or something, bounce back fast. So they don't get steadily more fucked up in random directions, and then eventually explode at someone.
Someone knows how to do that? Fucking Osirian knows how to do that.
Something. You've been looking for?
I'm fine, but I would have appreciated it if this could happen to people I, wrecked accidentally. What are the operative ingredients?
To be clear, I am not sure that the same approaches would work on having been tortured by your bosses because you are in Cheliax.
I don't really see how having been raped by an Osirian royal who owns you is any different.
That's fair. I think the thing I mean to say is that things are very specific, some things that look very bad from the outside don't hurt too much, and some things that look like nothing, next to other things you've been through, can be too much. I know lots of specific things that happen to girls in this palace. I don't know much about Cheliax. I can tell you the things I know, but they might not work for you.
Carissa has obtained a dress and is scrubbing blood off her hands in one of the fancy mosaic basins. Yeah, I'm not going to try offering lemon water.
It's not about the lemon water. It's about little decisions that you get to make that go the way you expect. Do you want this or that? And you get the one you want, consistently. It helps people reorient. It has to be something that couldn't possibly be a test or a game or have a right answer. If you weren't in a hurry, I'd do it with the clothes too. Do you want the blue dress or the pink? Do you want to lace it up, or do you want me to do it? Do you want me to do your hair?
I think if you hurt someone enough, that comes across as a game no matter what the question is.
Well, if you hurt someone, then you certainly shouldn't be their recovery person. That should be someone who doesn't have power over them, who they feel safe around, who doesn't report to you, and who is going to be willing to stand up to you and tell you to lay off if you're about to damage them further. I don't have the authority to tell your ride to Keltham that you're ready to go, but I do have the authority to say that you aren't, yet, if it seemed like actually going to Keltham was a terrible idea that was going to damage everyone involved and maybe lead to an inner sea war.
My not going to Keltham is a terrible idea that might spark an inner sea war.
You don't have to convince me. I'm not going to stand in your way. But if you were curled up in a ball crying, then I'd tell your ride I wasn't releasing you yet. Not because I want an inner sea war, mind, I really don't, but because people who have hurt themselves into weird twisted pretzels that can go up in flames at the first spark start more inner sea wars than people who haven't.
Carissa's hands are clean. She's dressed. She notices herself being slightly sad about this fact and decides it's fine to stay 30 more seconds. What would you do for someone who was betrayed by someone they loved and trusted and was really twisted into a pretzel about it?
You can't follow a script for that. You just have to let them steer and be there and listen and hurt with them and be angry with them and be sad with them and make sure they're not alone.
Right. Thanks. That was interesting. I don't suppose you want to come help do injured people repair in Keltham's secret lair?
What's the pay like?
You know, I should really be getting used to that by now. I will get back to you about the pay. Where's my ride?
Outside the dome, I think. She opens the door.
Then, if someone will show her the way, Carissa will depart. At a bit of a run.
Indeed, he's not getting paid the nearly infinite amount required for him to go inside the Black Dome, and be unable to cast spells for the several minutes it might take him to figure that out. He's just hanging around right outside the Black Dome until Sevar shows up, idly playing with some spell silver, it having become much cheaper nowadays, seeing if he can figure out what it would take to put together an assembly line for +2 intelligence headbands, as Sevar is reputed to have personally invented. Keltham says he mostly thinks she did, but doesn't know for sure because of the conspiracy. It might have been somebody else to impress him more, to make up for other demands on Sevar's time.
She steps out of the Black Dome in an Osirian-style beaded blue dress, an illusion making her look like a normal Osirian woman leaving the dome for normal Osirian reasons, a +2 splendor headband on her head.
Illusions. Good afternoon. I am Keltham's employee. I am to mind blank you immediately. Will you not resist?
The illusions aren't to fool him. Understood. I won't resist.
He flicks an enormous powerful day-duration abjuration loose at her, which promptly settles in. He didn't use a scroll or item, so this person must be at least an 8th circle wizard, or maybe a priest with an unusual domain. Incidentally, Carissa's arcane sight isn't seeing anything magical about him. Rydul, he says. 8th circle necromancer. Keltham says you are supposedly recently 4th circle, and supposedly quite good at spellcraft for that. Though he does not know now what was truth and what was lie, in that, save that Ione thought it probably true.
Are they making small talk? Why are they making small talk? Is he professionally interested in whether she's actually good at magic, or whether that was made up to impress Keltham? Carissa's focus of thought, the set of people she's paying even the slightest bit of attention to. has been narrowing and narrowing this morning, and now it's just Keltham, and it's hard to think of anything else. Her deeply unreasonable splendor of course means she's answering despite this, with a slightly embarrassed smile. I hit 4th shortly after meeting Keltham, and 5th this morning. I haven't met anyone better than me at spellcraft, but Cheliax, you know, has a dearth of high-level wizards due to our defection problem. It was immediately obvious once she thought about it that that was what explained the differential between 4th and 5th circle scarcity.
5th? At your age? My. Perhaps we shall have somewhat to discuss once we are settled in. Well, do you want to take in the sights of Sothis, make some purchases, with your newfound freedom, or shall I conduct you straightwise to Keltham's lair? Keltham has not, in fact, extended any promises that you will be allowed to leave any time soon after entering. Its location is terribly secret, you see.
Of course he's not going to let me leave. No reasonable nation-state at this stage of this game, having gotten hold of me, would let me leave, and I'm pretty sure Osirian's only doing it because they can't afford to piss him off when he's their defense against Cheliax, and because I told them very tearfully that I was scared Keltham was going to scare Asmodeus into destroying the world. I don't have shopping to do. I'm not free. Let's please go.
I do expect Keltham would let you fly free if you ask now, being still that sort of person. Though without me to mind blank you, you'd obviously be kidnapped shortly after. Well, let's be along then. Prepare for teleport. He pokes her shoulder.
It's sort of good to hear that Keltham's still that sort of person. It's also sort of disappointing, like, on some level she didn't want to have ownership of this choice. She wanted it to be inevitable. She does not resist the teleport.
They're now inside an indoors room, possibly an underground chamber judging by how one wall is rock. There's a Mage's Sanctum enchantment permanency'd about the whole area, and the border of a forbiddance in front of her, with a very solid-looking and magical door ahead of that. It looks remarkably like the Chelish safe-house prison, really. There's a tiefling woman here of scarred face, dressed as a rich man's maid might be.
Password, Sweetstone Sunlight. It's a neutral good forbiddance, so don't forget that. It'll fry you like sausage. This young lady is Tarnish?
Clothes more than expensive enough to fix the scars, if she, or if Keltham, wanted that. Pleasure to meet you, Tarnish.
Tarnish, Irwine. The pleasure is all yours, I'm sure, and it will pass swiftly. I'm not an admirer of Cheliax's work on Keltham. A harsh, melodic voice, like this woman had been a singer before her throat took an arrow to the knee. I can take you to Keltham, do you wish, or bring you refreshments, or take you to your new bedroom to rest, or give you a tour of the premises, which are not large.
Keltham didn't express a preference?
Keltham is always very careful to determine others' wants and needs before expressing his own. He'd no more just tell someone what to do than he'd smile or flirt or risk hurting somebody or get angry or have sex.
Tarnish is not in love with Keltham, to be clear, or even fond of him. She just wants to hurt you. I'd have warned you about that if I'd thought ahead, but I didn't think of it because of my overwhelming distaste for everything about Keltham's personal life.
Wow, this sure sounds like one functional research organization, Carissa does not say. If you want to hurt me, conventional methods work fine. Confusing me about what Keltham wants does not. I need to talk to him, but if he's not interruptible or has no desire to see me, I'll go to my room. She is absolutely not going to have feelings about Keltham from something someone said to her specifically to hurt her.
I'm not permitted to hurt people by conventional methods, only with my words. Keltham is interruptible. I'll take you to him.
Character named Keltham. Alignment, true neutral. Character level 2+1. Deity, Keltham. Homeland, Dath Ilan. Class, Wizard level 2, Nirshtur Idabur. Alchemist, Chemist level 1. School, Universalist. Languages, baseline, native language, Taldane, Osirian. Strength, 9. Constitution, 19, originally 13. Dexterity, 10. Intelligence, 22, originally 18. Wisdom, 16. Charisma, 18, originally 14. Magic items equipped. Headband of mental prowess, enhancing intelligence and charisma by 4 points each. Gloves of use magical device adding 5 points. Belt of mighty constitution, enhancing constitution by 6 points. Tiny sword of glibness. Ring of sustenance. Glasses of arcane sight. Various other items. Feats. Being a computer programmer with extensive experience in math-heavy video games. Skill focus, use magical device. Traits. Chemistry training from Dath Ilan. Mathematical training from Dath Ilan. Pragmatic activator. Signature spell, prestidigitation. Skills. Spellcraft, 3 ranks with additional bonuses from class skill, intelligence, theoretical magician, and magical aptitude. Use magical device, 3 ranks with additional bonuses from class skill, skill focus, magical aptitude, intelligence, due to pragmatic activator, and gloves. Bluff, 3 ranks with a bonus from charisma, various knowledge skills. That person's first action on hearing that Carissa is on her way will be to swap out his +4+0+4 headband for a +0+0+6 headband. That should be maximal attainable previous Kelthamness, and the less different he seems, the less it will hurt her, probably. He doesn't want to hurt Carissa without a reason. Tarnish will probably have said something cutting enough, or the Osirians warned Carissa enough of their own perspective, that Carissa will not be entirely unprepared. She should arrive warned, in a context where she'd hear the words warily, rather than them hitting with all the force of reality straight out. He couldn't ask Redul to say anything here. Redul made it a condition of his employment that Keltham's personal life drama would be causally screened off from him to the maximum feasible degree, which valid.
Keltham, lawful chaotic Iorwain. That person looks much the same outwardly. His face is maybe slightly thinner. To arcane sight, he's got a headband of +6 splendor, gloves enhancing some skill, a +6 constitution enhancing belt, a ring of sustenance, glasses of, probably arcane sight, and various other filled slots. He is currently doing something with a flat metal plate inscribed with a complicated spell silver pattern, spell silver wires above that, and what looks like a scaffold or something with a lot of moving magical parts that could not possibly be a spell, item, or anything functional at all. He looks up at her when she enters the room. "You look different," he states.
She kneels. It feels less complicated that way. And if she'd do it for Abigail and for Dispater, and, without conscious decision, dominated, for the Pharaoh of Osirian, well, it feels strange to just stand there for Keltham. You look different, too. I got it done in Dis. Not for you, I actually thought at the time you'd probably have mixed feelings about it, but I thought it'd help with my cult, and my cult might be important.
Let's not talk about your cult. Presumably it's an intervention by the god of tavern rumors, which means I try to think about it as little as possible. Carissa, I am not able to just resume our relationship where it left off. If that's what kneeling to me is meant to, ask, offer.
No, I figured that. I'm here to try to make sure the world doesn't get destroyed, and to help you find something better.
That sounds like it should be a private conversation and probably a long one. Can we continue this in time-dilated demiplane?
Oh, time-dilated demiplane. She wonders how long it's been for him, and then cuts that line of thought off as unproductive. More than a 2x multiplier is hard to get. Probably it hasn't been more than double what it's been for her. Yes, of course.
It's new and temporary, so don't cast from any overpowered scrolls if you've got those with you. There'll be a 9th circle of Sarenrae there when we arrive, finishing up the portal. Don't talk until I've had a chance to put up a rope trick for privacy. He picks up the complicated spell silver wires and spell diagram-like plate, sweeps it into a bag of holding, takes a scroll from the bag of holding, and a tuning fork. He conducts her the short walk back outside the Forbiddance, then casts Plane Shift, 5th circle divine form, from scroll, slowly, carefully, but without obvious difficulty.
Carissa's feelings are alternating between declaring loudly that they're very complicated and apparently not being there at all. Why won't anyone just light her on fire until she's no longer harmed them? She bets if she went back to Cheliax, they would obligingly light her on fire. She takes Keltham's hand for the plane shift and says nothing.
Welcome to this personal temporary time-dilated demiplane. The sky here is bright and white, like somebody took the sun and sky and blended the colors back together. There's grass beneath her feet and dirt below the grass. It's small for a demiplane, maybe as wide across as 3 houses in each direction. There's a pool of clear water that looks plenty wide enough to swim in, a house distance away. Walls of mist demarcate the plane's edges. A clean desk rests next to 4 bookcases, all of whose shelves are full of mess. There's a whiteboard, currently clean, a cabinet, one of whose drawers, visibly to arcane sight, contains a few pounds of spell silver. An adventurer's high-quality portable personal bedroom rig, calling it a tent doesn't do it justice, stands beside. Magic here behaves slightly oddly. If you stare around with arcane sight for a while, you can figure out that divination is impeded here. A mage's private sanctum overlays the whole area, but not a permanent one. Also, here is a very impressive-looking Grand High Priestess of Sarenrae, but she's busy casting the incredibly slow magic of Create Greater Demiplane.
So Sarenrae's in on it too? Or no, Keltham said he was trying not to think about Caden's plans, so that means he doesn't consider himself to be working directly with Caden. She can see the outlines of the two pieces she's missing. The two pieces that'd make everything else fit together. Maybe just one piece, but definitely not more than two. One is what outcome Caden Kaleen and Nethys are angling for, and why only they are working towards it. The other is why Cheliax hasn't attacked Osirian yet, and she's pretty sure this has the same answer. Why Keltham changed course to work with the Church of Sarenrae and the Padishah Empire when she sold her soul.
He pulls out another scroll and casts again, putting up a rope trick, and climbs up into the space thus created, offering a hand up to Carissa if when she follows.
She didn't even know you could do that, though, now that she thinks about it. There's no rule you have to be on the material to cast a rope trick. She climbs in.
I suppose, in a sense, we are beginning again where we left off, inside a rope trick. There are too many things to say. I suppose I'll just say one of them. Why did you return my option premium and sell your soul?
I don't know for sure because I erased my memories of the decision, but I think it was to get Asmodia and Peranza out of being eternally tortured, purchase the souls of everyone else on Project Lawful so I could protect them too, get 15 wishes and an artifact headband so I could make progress on, ensuring you'd be better off for knowing me, and on coming up with a plan to save the world, and I be to compact with Asmodeus in a way that'll make it easier to overthrow him, or maybe that part was all Caden's plan, not mine.
What happened to Asmodia and Peranza? Priority question. Were they being temporarily tortured for long enough that this would possibly damage anybody who wasn't you or Pilar?
Well, at the time I thought they were, but I purchased them having never been tortured, and having been completely fine all along. So, in fact, they were at no point tortured, and were fine all along. Peranza was executed for betraying the project. Asmodia, we think, killed herself.
I did not know you could do that, in fact. Did not know that was an option. Thank you. That is, I hadn't believed before that they were dead and being tortured, but thank you. I am a lot less feeling what I was feeling about the soul sale thing.
I would speak to this with more confidence if I'd re-derived all my thinking, which I haven't yet, but it wasn't about not being yours. I wanted that. It was about people who'd trusted you, trusted civilization. That's what Peranza did. She decided she was with civilization, warned Iomade about the project, and I only had the one thing to buy them with. And I am not really worried about my eternity, because we need to overthrow Asmodeus anyway, and we can't exactly need to overthrow Asmodeus harder, right?
Oh, if Peranza and Asmodia had been effectively destroyed, it would in fact be possible for Asmodeus to be in more trouble than he currently is. What, according to you, do you think is going on right now?
I have two big glaring holes in my understanding of what's going on, and I suspect I know enough to figure them out, but I haven't had time. I don't think when I'm being mind-read. It's very convenient. I think that you're going to try to overthrow Asmodeus, and by default, he'll release Rovagug and the planet will probably get destroyed. I think that Nethys knows this and tipped off Caden Kaleen and maybe other gods, for some reason, and that they've been angling for conditions to exist under which you and Asmodeus can compromise and not fight, and those conditions might involve me, and maybe also Pilar ascending. I have a compact with Asmodeus and a cult, which might be useful for ascending, and I think I could do it in 10 years, maybe 5 if we have this fancy time-dilated demiplane full-time. Pilar's trying to eat Caden Kaleen. The glaring holes are, why are only Nethys and Caden in on this, and not all of good and most of neutral? And why have Cheliax and Osirian neither made war nor peace? What are they waiting for? I can explain, if you want, what those glaring holes are entangled with, how I got to them as the most important missing pieces.
Meritzel used alter self and disguise self to shift to a number of pretty women, for me. Marin, some other Dath Ilani celebrities, Ranthal, who I drew with silent image. Also some women in Galarian, whose looks I liked, but didn't want to complicate my life by trying to date, right then. Jacint Subirix, Willa Shalira, Abigail Thrune.
Sure, figures. She remembers thinking at the time it was impressive Merit Excel had the nerve to impersonate Abigail. Even Carissa would have asked Abigail before doing that. And Merit Excel's not exactly someone who can just write the Queen for permission. Oh, who gains by having Keltham have sex with someone alter-selfed to look like Abigail or a bunch of other people? What do they gain? The idiots? Abigail? It must have been Abigail. No one else would have conceived of and done it without Carissa's approval. Decided to get themselves some Keltham-descended children secretly. To use as leverage against him? No, they must have known that wouldn't work. Why then? Why make the case where they lose so much worse than it needed to be? You could probably get Cheliax to hand them all over, if you point out your alternative is blowing the country up.
I'm mostly guessing it's just Abigail, but if they know I know, they hide her outside the country, and then I have no further reason to blow up the country. Or Egorian. I wouldn't glass all of Cheliax if glassing Egorian was enough.
Do you want me to kill her?
I would not have guessed that was something you could do.
I mean, it wouldn't be trivial, but I bet I can. She wouldn't even have to stay dead. That's the really hard part of assassinating someone.
The more concerning possibility is that it's not just the one kid. I am figuring that they probably did not extract semen directly from my epididymis, or steal it after Merixel performed oral sex, and use that to impregnate a lot of other women until I had 144 kids. If that modality worked for them, it would have been foolish of Abigail to risk disguising herself as Merit Excel, disguised as Abigail, which was a huge tip-off. Even though I had that thought while I was with Isidre, in the palace, with a lot of 8th Circle casters potentially around. But I have it flagged as an instance of trying to guess the conspiracy's competence level at a consistent level, and I've had bad results from that in the past. You know anything relevant to the possibility set of no offspring awaiting ensoulment, one offspring by Abigail, multiple offspring, many offspring?
Isidre was just Abigail in disguise. Otherwise, I don't know anything. They didn't tell me. I'd have told them not to.
Wow, that must have been hilarious for everybody who wasn't me.
And the Isidre impersonator in the room when you met Abigail, I think they executed her afterwards. And Abigail herself, who had to smile at you while you criticized her to her face and then gracefully lose to you about me, I think she didn't like that much. And me, I took a punishment in the middle of all that for thinking insubordinate things about Abigail and was a little out of it. Aspexia was having fun, I guess.
Oh, so the etiquette lessons would have been Aspexia. I wondered about that afterwards. Don't take this the wrong way, but your conspiracy was kind of shit, and I'm ashamed that it worked on me literally at all.
Cheliax wasn't actually good at lying to people who were allowed to think about what was true, probably because it doesn't have any.
I'll have to think about it again once I'm boosting intelligence and wisdom, but preliminarily I'd say that takes probability of multiple kids from 40% to 30%. And the probability of lots of kids from 8% to 20%. I don't actually want to glass Cheliax or kill anyone at all, really, but I don't see a way out of this before the given time deadlines that doesn't involve killing a lot of people. I'm sort of sad about that. Haven't actually killed anybody on purpose, up until now, despite all the people dying and going to hell around me, whose names I never knew. What's your alternative?
The time deadline is a problem. I don't see how I can do my plan before the time deadline. If we had a bit more time, I have 15 wishes granted by a devil out of hell. I figured we'd make ourselves smarter, see more options. I have broad outlines for kinds of things it'd be useful to do, like close the world wound. I bet that's possible if you're smart enough and have approximately unlimited resources, and it's the kind of thing that gets people believing you're on a path to ascension, but it's not going to happen fast enough. I also bet we can get Dispatter to help us, but we'd have to read over that confidentiality agreement incredibly carefully, and I don't see how to do it in such little time. How low would the probability have to be that you have kids in Cheliax for you to not want to destroy Cheliax? And if we conquered Cheliax and it was better, would that fix it?
If Cheliax is playing the game that way, they could put kids outside Cheliax so that I couldn't solve the problem by destroying Cheliax. From the standpoint of Dathilani storytelling, a plot development like that isn't trying to signal you to destroy a larger area of landmass on one planet. It's saying, you have to fix everything. No way out but fixing everything. I'm hearing that your current self, as opposed to the self who sent you here on a memory gambit, doesn't have a plan for beating the deadline.
I definitely think we should fix everything, but I do not see a way to fix everything in the next month. Or do you mean it's all right for the kids to exist, so long as they'll grow up in a better world?
Probably the intended reading. You mentioned a compact with Asmodeus, and seemed to think you could get Dispater on our side. What's that whole part about?
Do you, Carissa Sevar, conquer territories or hearts in Hell's name? Be you fairly judged by Hell's prince to be the most prime mover in such conquests, such unsouled and unclericked souls from those lands and peoples as enter into Hell calling your name, in death as they called it in life, and did you and Hell more service than disservice, shall pass into your custody or the custody of those in Hell you name your slaves or allies. And when you have conquered 3/4 of Avestan, all such souls out of Avestan shall be yours as well. When 3/4 of Galarian is yours, all such souls out of Galarian. When 3/4 of this plane is yours, all such souls out of this plane. When 3/4 of Pharasma's creation is yours, all such souls out of creation, while Hell's dominions of those lands and peoples last. And all this be annulled should you fail finally after death in being acknowledged by Hell as a hellish power, or should the yield in strength and wealth from those souls granted you be less than, he accounts as ordinary from his subservient powers of Hell, or should the Prince of Hell fairly judge you to have entered his despite in death or life, she says once again, from memory. So the obvious avenues to cheat are to, in some meaningful respect conquer most of creation, which I am not entirely pessimistic about, but which would need time, and to get someone else named Hell's Prince, probably Dispater, who will evaluate me more favorably. But even before I do that, if I conquer anywhere, people who go to Hell because of me and calling my name are mine, and safe, unless I look like I'll never become a power in Hell. And according to Aspexia Rugaton, I have a lot of cultists. I hadn't had much time to think of a plan, but the fragments of one that I had were that I'd enhance us both as far as possible, ask for your help figuring out how to close the world wound, which is the sort of thing that someone on the path to ascension would do. It'll make my cult take me much more seriously, declare it my territory and those who go there my possessions, and then reach out to Dispater with a contract for confidential negotiations where he can't use anything learned from the negotiations to hurt me. My impression of Dispater is that he enjoys indulging me, if it's not obviously stupid, if it grants him pride and respect in Hell, and I've already had as much benefit as I can from that in my current position. But if I did something epic and impressive, he'd be willing to indulge me again. If the world wound doesn't work, I could instead seize Cheliax, which proves my Asmodean bona fides all right, and which I feel less averse to now that I know this entire situation is Abigail's fault more than I already thought it was. That doesn't count towards my conquests, but it does count towards how cool Dispater thinks I am. And if neither of those work, I could probably start actually conquering other countries. Except if I do that, I have responsibilities to everyone in them, so we'd have to be really sure of subsequent steps of the plan. Anyway, once I had an impressive track record as rising power of Hell, I'd bring a confidential negotiation, tell Dispater I intend to overthrow Asmodeus, and see what he says. He's not bound to obey Asmodeus, and he runs Dis, not well enough, but closer to not being stupidly wasteful. He'd be willing to run it in an acceptable way. He wouldn't destroy the world about the rules changing. And he's, a devil. He respects strength and he respects trying to rise to your place. I think he'd help me if there were something compelling in it for him. I think at Inti 29 I can compact with him safely. I am assuming here that you have some fraction of a plan to kill Asmodeus already, because none of what you're doing makes any sense if you don't. But I am assuming that it's a bad plan that runs unacceptable to me risks, and we might need to think of a better one. In particular, I'm worried you just don't mind. That Asmodeus might release Ravagug. It's reassuring, you saying you don't want to kill people. I'd gotten scared that you'd just decided to be Ilani, and clean up this whole messy little bit of reality. But I'm not helping with a plan where Asmodeus might release Rovagug. I want to fix the world, not be worse than any evil ever to scour it.
If you wish to support this AI reading and others like it, please visit patreon.com/AskWhoCastsAI. Any help is appreciated. And thank you to executive producer John Doe 7776059.